1. George Mikan, the paint rule. George Mikan, the NBA's first true dominant big man in the late 1940s and early 1950s, completely changed basketball. Standing 6 feet 10 inches when few players had that kind of size, Mikan used his strength and footwork to dominate the low post. He would camp in the paint and overwhelm defenders, scoring with hooks and layups almost at will. To counter his dominance, the NBA introduced the 3-second rule, which prohibited offensive players from staying in the key, paint, for more than 3 seconds. This forced big men like Mikan to move around rather than sit under the basket. The rule is still one of the most important in basketball today, ensuring balance between post players and perimeter movement. 2. Wilt Chamberlain, widened lane, free throw rules, goaltending. Wilt Chamberlain's dominance forced multiple changes to the NBA rulebook. In college, he was so unstoppable near the rim that defensive goaltending was outlawed. In the NBA, the lane, paint, was widened from 12 to 16 feet, commonly called the Wilt Chamberlain rule, to prevent him from parking close to the basket. He also used creative methods at the free throw line, like attempting to leap from the line to dunk the ball, which led to a rule requiring players to release the ball from behind the free throw line. Chamberlain's sheer athleticism, size, and skill were unlike anything seen before. These changes highlight how one man could force the league to redesign the court and adjust long-standing rules to maintain competitive balance. 3. Bill Russell, offensive interference. Bill Russell's shot blocking and rebounding abilities in the late 1950s and 1960s were game-changing. He had a knack for leaping above the rim and altering shots, not just defensively, but offensively as well. Russell and players like him would sometimes reach above the rim to tip in missed shots before they had a chance to come down, which created an unfair advantage. This led to the offensive goaltending rule, which prevents players from touching the ball on its downward flight toward the basket or while it is directly above the cylinder. Russell's athleticism pushed the NBA to redefine what was considered a fair scoring opportunity, ensuring that rim play didn't become completely dominated by the tallest and most athletic players. 4. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, NCAA dunk ban. Before he became the NBA's all-time scoring leader, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then Lou Alcindor, was so dominant in college at UCLA that the NCAA introduced one of the most famous rule changes in basketball history, the ban on dunking in 1967. Kareem, standing 7 feet 2 inches with incredible agility, would dunk over defenders with ease, making him nearly unstoppable. The NCAA argued it was to encourage skill, but many saw it as a direct attempt to neutralize Kareem's dominance. As a result, Kareem perfected the skyhook, one of the most unguardable shots in basketball history. This ban lasted until 1976, after Kareem had already transitioned to the NBA. Ironically, the attempt to limit him may have made him even deadlier, as the skyhook became his signature weapon and a legendary part of the game. The rule highlights how one player can reshape basketball, both by force and by innovation. 5. Shaquille O'Neal, hack-a-Shaq, and reinforced rims. Shaquille O'Neal's sheer size and power in the 1990s and 2000s forced two big adjustments to the game. First, his dominance in the paint made defenders resort to intentional fouling, sending him to the free throw line where he notoriously struggled. This strategy, dubbed hack-a-Shaq, became so disruptive that the NBA eventually adjusted rules to limit intentional fouls away from the ball in the final 2 minutes of games. Second, Shaq was so strong that he frequently broke backboards and even collapsed entire basket structures by dunking with force. The NBA had to introduce reinforced rims and stanchions to prevent games from being delayed by broken equipment. Few players in history have combined strength, agility, and charisma like Shaq, but the fact that the league had to literally rebuild its equipment and rethink foul strategies shows just how impactful he was on the game. 6. Allen Iverson, carrying and palming emphasis. Allen Iverson, known as the Answer, revolutionized guard play in the late 1990s and early 2000s with his lightning-quick crossovers and dribble moves. However, many of his signature moves blurred the line between legal dribbling and palming carrying the ball. Iverson would often cup the ball while changing direction, making it nearly impossible for defenders to react. His famous crossover against Michael Jordan remains one of the most iconic plays in NBA history, but it also drew attention to how he manipulated the ball. The NBA began to more strictly emphasize carrying violations, in part because of Iverson's influence. While he wasn't the only player to push ball handling creativity, he was the face of it, forcing referees to redefine what counted as legal. Iverson's moves opened the door for future guards to innovate, but they also highlighted the fine balance between flair and fairness in ball handling. 7. Michael Jordan. Hand-checking rule. Michael Jordan's dominance in the 1980s and 1990s forced the NBA to address hand-checking, a defensive tactic where players use their hands to impede or steer offensive players. Defenders constantly constantly tried to use physical contact to slow down Jordan, who was nearly unstoppable when isolated. As Jordan thrived despite this, the league realized hand-checking gave defenders too much control and made perimeter play overly physical. By the early 2000s, after Jordan's era, the NBA officially eliminated most forms of hand-checking, allowing offensive players more freedom. This rule change opened the game for future stars like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and today's elite scorers. While Jordan wasn't the sole reason for the rule change, his ability to shine despite aggressive defense highlighted the imbalance, leading the NBA to modernize its rules to promote offensive creativity and scoring freedom across the league. 8. LeBron James. Gather step clarification. LeBron James's combination of speed, power, and ball handling at 6 feet 9 inches redefined what was possible for a forward. His transition drives often sparked debates about traveling violations, with critics claiming he took extra steps. In 2009, the NBA clarified the gather step rule, which allows a player to collect the ball and take 2 steps before finishing. This clarification made many of LeBron's moves legal, as his long strides had previously appeared to be travels. While the rule wasn't written solely for him, LeBron's unique athleticism was a major influence. It highlighted how the league had to modernize definitions to match evolving play styles. Today, nearly every superstar, from Giannis Antetokounmpo to James Harden, benefits from this clarification. LeBron's impact showed how a player's size and speed could push the league to adjust, balancing between enforcing rules and allowing natural basketball evolution. 9. Charles Barkley. 5-second back to the basket rule. Charles Barkley was a powerful yet undersized forward who dominated in the post during the 1980s and 1990s. One of his favorite tactics was backing down defenders for extended periods, using his strength to bully them closer to the basket. This style slowed the pace of the game, as Barkley could sometimes back down for 15 to 20 seconds before making his move. To address this, the NBA introduced the 5-second back to the basket rule, which prevents players from dribbling with their back to the basket for more than 5 seconds inside the free throw line. The rule was designed to keep the game flowing and discourage stalling. Barkley himself joked about how he changed the NBA rulebook, but it highlights how his physical, grinding style of play shaped how post offense was regulated. This change paved the way for a faster, more perimeter-oriented game in the decades that followed. 10. Zion Williamson, NCAA rim safety and college adjustments. Zion Williamson, even before entering the NBA, was so physically explosive in college that he raised questions about the durability of equipment and fairness of play. In 2019, his famous shoe blowout, where his Nike sneaker ripped apart mid-game at Duke, led to debates about whether equipment and court rules could handle such force. While the NCAA didn't create an official Zion rule, his size and athleticism drew comparisons to Shaquille O'Neal regarding rim safety and reinforced equipment. Colleges began investing in stronger basket structures, and shoe partnerships faced pressure to ensure gear durability. Zion also reignited talk about whether certain athletes should bypass the NCAA altogether, influencing the NBA's consideration of the one-and-done rule. Though indirect, Zion's presence showed how a single player's physical gifts can expose the limits of existing systems, forcing institutions to adapt to protect players and the game. 11. Stephen Curry, freedom of movement and perimeter rules. Stephen Curry's shooting revolution in the 2010s reshaped basketball strategy and rules. His limitless range and quick release forced defenders to play much more physically on the perimeter, often clutching, grabbing, or bumping him off the ball. To protect offensive creativity, the NBA emphasized freedom of movement rules, cracking down on excessive off-ball contact. Curry's style also pressured the league to reevaluate defensive schemes, as constant switching and trapping highlighted how illegal screens and contact were being overlooked. By adjusting officiating, the NBA helped ensure shooters like Curry could operate with fairness, not constant grabbing. His influence didn't just shift strategy, it changed officiating philosophy. Today's game is far more perimeter-oriented, with spacing and shooting prioritized, largely due to Curry. The rule emphasis wasn't made in his name, but it exists because of the way he bent defenses beyond what the rulebook originally anticipated. 12. Reggie Miller, kick-out foul rule. Reggie Miller was one of the NBA's greatest shooters and a master of drawing fouls on jump shots. His signature move involved kicking out his legs unnaturally during his jump shot, tricking referees into calling defensive fouls when minimal contact occurred. This became so common it was dubbed the Reggie Miller rule. In the 1990s, the NBA adjusted officiating emphasis to stop rewarding shooters for initiating contact by unnaturally extending their legs. This preserved fairness, ensuring defenders weren't penalized for incidental or non-existent fouls. While Reggie wasn't the only player to use such tactics, his consistency and playoff spotlight made it infamous. Today, the rule has evolved further, James Harden and Trae Young face similar restrictions for foul baiting on threes. Miller's legacy isn't just about clutch shots, but also about how his creativity forced the NBA to crack down on offensive manipulation of foul calls. 13. Kevin Durant rip-through move. Kevin Durant introduced one of the most frustrating offensive moves for defenders in the late 2000s, the rip-through. Durant would swing his arms upward through a defender's outstretched arms, forcing referees to call a shooting foul. Initially, this gave Durant free throws whenever defenders reached in, making him nearly unguardable. The NBA eventually ruled that the rip-through should be called a non-shooting foul if it occurred before an actual shot motion. This adjustment balanced fairness, as defenders argued they were being penalized for simply holding their ground. Durant's height and skill as a perimeter scorer made the rip-through particularly deadly, but the rule change reflected the league's broader attempt to curb unnatural foul-baiting tactics. Even so, Durant's move influenced a generation of scorers, showing how his creativity forced defenses and the rulebook to evolve around him. 14. James Harden, foul baiting and step back. James Harden mastered manipulating referees more than perhaps any modern player. His crafty ability to draw fouls on three-pointers by leaning into defenders or hooking arms became notorious. Harden's step-back three also sparked debates about traveling, as defenders and fans argued he was taking extra steps. The NBA responded by clarifying gather rules and cracking down on non-basketball moves used solely to draw fouls. Harden's influence was so strong that in 2021, the NBA formally changed officiating to eliminate foul calls on shooters who leaned unnaturally into defenders. This directly reduced Harden's free throw numbers. His legacy shows how far offensive creativity can push the boundaries of the game, forcing the NBA to strike a balance between rewarding skill and preventing exploitation of loopholes. Harden's brilliance, like Iverson's before him, ensured that the way referees call games would never be the same. 15. Dirk Nowitzki, traveling clarifications. Dirk Nowitzki's unique style as a 7-footer who played like a guard made referees rethink traveling calls. His signature one-legged fadeaway jumper and face-up game often involved unusual footwork that confused defenders and officials. Critics argued that his step-backs and pivots sometimes skirted traveling violations. As international players like Dirk entered the NBA, the league emphasized clearer definitions of the gather step and pivot foot rules to standardize calls. Dirk wasn't directly named in these changes, but his influence on the modern stretch big was undeniable. His unorthodox yet legal moves encouraged the NBA to modernize rule language, ensuring that creative footwork could coexist with fairness. Today, nearly every forward uses step-backs and fadeaways inspired by Dirk. 16. Daryl Dawkins and Shaq, again, breakaway rim rule before Shaquille O'Neal. Daryl Dawkins was the NBA's original backboard destroyer. Nicknamed Chocolate Thunder, Dawkins became famous in the late 1970s for dunking so violently that he shattered glass backboards on multiple occasions. His highlight dunks were spectacular, but also dangerous, as shattered glass posed safety risks to players and fans. The NBA responded by introducing breakaway rims, designed to flex under pressure and prevent shattering. Later, Shaq's own rim-breaking dunks in the 1990s reinforced the need for even sturdier equipment, leading to modern rim and stanchion designs used today. These changes ensured both safety and game continuity, as broken backboards had previously delayed games. Dawkins's flair and Shaq's power literally forced the NBA to reconstruct its arenas. Few players have left such a physical mark on the game, proving that sometimes basketball rules extend beyond the court to the equipment itself. 17. Yao Ming, no defensive contact in the paint. When Yao Ming entered the NBA in 2002, his size, 7 feet 6 inches, and skill created a unique challenge. Defenders often leaned, pushed, or crowded him excessively in the paint to neutralize his height advantage. The NBA began strictly emphasizing illegal defense rules and cracking down on excessive physical contact in the post, partly to protect players like Yao. This adjustment ensured that size alone wouldn't lead to constant double-teaming with excessive holding and shoving. Yao also played a role in the NBA's globalization, as games involving him drew massive audiences in China. To keep stars like him effective, the league needed to guarantee fair conditions. While not as directly tied to a single Yao rule as others on this list, his presence shaped officiating philosophy toward protecting skilled big men, ensuring that basketball remained a skill game rather than a wrestling match under the rim. 18. Manute Bol, three-point curiosity. Manute Bol, the 7'7" shot-blocking giant, was known for his defense, but surprisingly also for his occasional three-point shooting. In the late 1980s, he had games where he drained multiple threes, unusual for a player of his height. His shooting from deep, combined with his rim protection, raised questions about how the three-point line impacted spacing and big man play. While Ball didn't directly cause a rule, the NBA began tracking how unusually tall players attempted threes, leading to eventual re-evaluations of the three-point line distance in 1994 and 1997. These adjustments weren't entirely because of Ball, but his presence highlighted how stretching the floor wasn't just for guards. Today's stretch bigs owe part of their evolution to pioneers like Ball, who made the league rethink the traditional roles of centers and how the three-point line shaped basketball's future. 19. Dwight Howard. Defensive 3 seconds. In the 2000s, Dwight Howard's defensive dominance as a shot blocker and paint anchor made the NBA's defensive 3-second rule more relevant. This rule prevents defenders from camping in the paint without actively guarding an opponent, promoting floor spacing and offensive flow. Howard wasn't the inventor of the issue, but his presence in Orlando magnified it. Teams complained about his ability to sit under the rim and deter drives all game. As a result, referees began more strictly enforcing the defensive 3-second violation during his era. This change ensured that even dominant rim protectors couldn't just patrol the paint endlessly. Howard's impact revealed the tension between protecting rim defenders and allowing offensive creativity. His prime years showed how one player's defensive talent could change how referees applied existing rules, influencing the modern balance between interior defense and perimeter play. 20. Dennis Rodman. Free throw lane violations. Dennis Rodman, one of the greatest rebounders ever, was notorious for trying to exploit every small loophole to gain an edge. During free throws, he would often delay entering the lane or use unusual timing to grab offensive rebounds. His antics led the NBA to tighten enforcement of lane violations on free throws, clarifying exactly when players could enter the paint. Rodman also pushed referees to watch off-ball physicality more closely, as his aggressive rebounding sometimes bordered on fouls. While these changes didn't carry his name like Hack-a-Shaq or Reggie Miller rule, Rodman's disruptive creativity made officials more attentive to free throw rebounding fairness. His influence showed how even role players could impact officiating philosophy. Rodman's hustle and rule bending forced the NBA to refine the timing and enforcement of free throw lane rules, keeping the game balanced for shooters and rebounders alike. 21. Rick Barry. Free throw motion. Rick Barry is remembered not just for his scoring ability, but also for his famous underhand free throw style. While his technique wasn't outlawed, his incredible efficiency, he retired with a career 90% free throw percentage, led to debate about shooting form regulations. Opponents sometimes argued that unorthodox motions could give players an unfair edge. So the NBA clarified rules around shooting motion, making sure all free throws were released from behind the line without stepping across. Barry's impact was more philosophical. The league ensured that every player's technique adhered to a uniform standard, no matter how strange it looked. While he didn't create a direct Barry rule, his underhand style forced the NBA to codify consistency in free throw execution. Ironically, though his method was the most effective in history, very few players copied him. But the league's clarity on shooting forms remains because of pioneers like Barry. 22. Hakeem Olajuwon. Traveling and pivot foot rules. Hakeem the Dream. Olajuwon's legendary footwork in the post, especially his dream shake, made him nearly impossible to guard in the 1980s and 1990s. His ability to pivot, fake, and spin confused both defenders and referees, who often struggled to determine whether his moves constituted traveling. As a result, the NBA clarified pivot foot rules to ensure consistency in calling traveling violations. Olajuwon's brilliance demonstrated how elite skill could blur the line between legal creativity and breaking the rules. The Dream Shake became a legal move largely because the NBA refined the definition of establishing and maintaining a pivot foot. Today, nearly every big man studies Hakeem's moves, and his influence is embedded in the rulebook. The fact that referees had to adjust their interpretation of traveling is a testament to how Hakeem's artistry transformed not only post-play, but also how the game is officiated. 23. Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson rule. Backing in. Before Charles Barkley popularized backing defenders down, Mark Jackson, the crafty point guard, used the same tactic excessively. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Jackson would slowly back smaller guards down from the three-point line, dribbling for 10 to 15 seconds at a time before making a move. This tactic slowed the pace and frustrated opponents. The NBA responded with what became known as the Mark Jackson rule, limiting players from dribbling with their back to the basket for more than 5 seconds outside the paint. This was later expanded into the modern 5-second back-to-the-basket rule that Barkley also influenced. Jackson's impact shows how even non-superstars could change the game by exploiting loopholes. While he wasn't as flashy as other rule changers, his style directly shaped NBA regulations, ensuring that ball movement and pace of play were preserved instead of endless backing down by guards. 24. Dwyane Wade pump fake foul draw. Dwyane Wade was a master at using the pump fake to draw defenders into the air and then initiate contact to earn free throws. While pump fakes were always part of basketball, Wade elevated it to an art form, often leaning into defenders or jumping sideways to exaggerate contact. His effectiveness forced the NBA to clarify rules about shooting fouls, emphasizing that contact initiated unnaturally by the offensive player shouldn't always result in free throws. This adjustment carried into the modern era, where players like James Harden and Trae Young took foul baiting to the extreme. Wade's influence sits at the intersection of skill and gamesmanship. He mastered illegal tactics so well that the league had to redefine how fouls were interpreted. His creativity helped future gods, but it also forced referees to distinguish between genuine fouls and offensive manipulation.